Good morning. Mad skills. Onya Sawu has mad skills. Period.
Jokes with no money. How about now? Thank you, Miriam. Can you hear me now? I was being hilarious.
Oh man, y'all missed it. Y'all missed it. It was funny.
Sorry about that. I think my mic is working now. Thanks for letting me know. As always, if you have like technical issues, any issues hearing us, any issues seeing us, put it in the comments and we'll fix it. But if you don't say anything, you won't know. Now they can hear us. Yay! So we're gonna get started. We have 11 folks watching, and I'm sure more will join as we continue. But my name is Onyesanu. This is my comrade Monica. We are both
My
members.
son,
And
my
Avery.
son Avery, he's going to be joining and listening into the presentation later on the interview.
Hi, Avery. I wish I had a Capri Sun. So this is Weekly Pan African News Live, and we are members of the All African People's Revolutionary Party. We are a revolutionary Pan African Socialist Party doing work here in occupied Tiwa territory, also known as Albuquerque. We started this weekly show back in March because the pandemic made it so we couldn't do in-person events safely anymore, particularly because our African people are being like drastically impacted by it. So we were like, how do we continue to build with our community while also social distancing, while also like keeping people safe? And we were like, let's start a show. And so we do the show every single Thursday at 11 a.m. Mountain Time, and we give news and analysis and interviews from a revolutionary Pan-African perspective. This is analysis that you're not gonna see anywhere else. Like they would never put me on TV. They would never put Monica on TV because we're gonna say things that are threatening to the power structure. So we decided to make our own platform and do the show for y'all. And we deeply appreciate every single person that tunes in. So if you have watched before, then you know that every single show, we like to start off with two things. First thing is a land acknowledgement. We want to acknowledge that we are speaking to y'all from stolen land. We are speaking to y'all from occupied Tiwa territory. The land that Albuquerque is built on belongs to the Tiwa Nation. The Tiwa Nation is still here. It is still their land. It doesn't matter how long ago you stole something. It will always remain stolen. It will always belong to the rightful owner. So this is Tiwa territory. It always will be, and they will get it back, just like our people will get Africa back, period. The second thing that we always start off with is calling in an ancestor. And the reason why we do that is because, like I mentioned, we are revolutionary Pan-Africanists. That means that we come from a continuum of African liberation struggle that has spanned centuries, hundreds of years, has spanned the entire globe. Neither Monica or I would be here talking to y'all if not for the struggles of our ancestors to get us here, to make our presence here possible. And so we would be remiss to not acknowledge them, to not hold them up, to not call them in, to not learn from them as we do this work in 2020. And so that's why we call in an ancestor. The ancestor we're going to call in today is Amilcar Cabral. And if you don't know who that is, if you've never heard that name before, I will explain who that is. So today is the anniversary of when Guinea-Bissau, which is an African country, gained independence from Portuguese colonialism. Guinea-Bissau fought an entire socialist revolution, like a guerrilla military struggle, an armed struggle against the Portuguese, who at the time were backed by NATO, to win their independence from colonialism and build a socialist state in its place. So the organization that built that movement, the organization that organized the masses of African people in Guinea-Bissau around the objective of their total liberation, was known as the PIGC. And Amilcar Cabral is the founder of the PIGC. The PIGC still exists to this day. It's actually a part of the All African People's Revolutionary Party, which you probably didn't know, but we're actually motherfucking huge. There's tons of us. And so And Amilcar Cabral is an example of a person who was brilliant in and of himself, but was also like an incredible organizer, was also committed to building the capacity of his people to struggle independently of him. Like the PIGC was such a strong organization that even though Amilcar Cabral was assassinated before Guinea-Bissau ever gained independence, it had no impact on the struggle. They were still successful after he died because they were so well organized. And as a testament to the kind of organization that man built, is a testament to the kind of man that he was. And so we uplift him today as someone whose name should like ring through every like African liberation space on the planet. And the only reason more people don't know who he is because he's been intentionally hidden. So we lift him up today. And with that, I'm going to pass to Monica to talk a little bit about what we're going to be doing on the show today.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Avery's going to join the conversation a little bit.
Yes, I am, because I'm going to make this very interesting.
And so just excited to be here with you all today. And thank you, Nyesawu, for calling in our ancestors that we hold dear to us and continue to help us in the struggle. And so today we have with us Elena and Summer from FAM. And FAM is a childcare collective.
Thank you. They can. FAM shirt.
And Avery's wearing his FAM shirt. And so is Elena today. And we are excited to have them on. Not only do they do childcare, but they do so much around political education and community organizing. And so we're excited to have them on the show today. Avery, before I have Summer and Elena introduce themselves, do you want to share what you like about FAM?
What I like about FAM is they share and help community. Any kid can come, and mostly any event, and any time. I feel like we should make some care thing or something. And I remember when you gave us the FAM shirts and you let us paint on some.
Yeah. So
and other stuff. And my name is Avery, and I like doing thousands and lots of things.
Thank you so much, Avery, for that.
Now Summer
Summer and Elena, would you introduce yourself briefly and then introduce yourself briefly?
And then share your time with us or just talk or something like that.
And then we have a series of questions to ask. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm Summer. I've been part of FAM since more or less the beginning. I like gender neutral pronouns, most commonly they, them.
And I'm Elena, also part of FAM from the beginning. So we've been around operating here in Albuquerque for a little over 2 years, I think. So yeah, we're so honored and excited to be here with you today. So great to see Avery. Yeah, and I think, yeah, we can share a little bit about our mission and how we came to be to start off. So yeah, I wanted to say, some people, a lot of you know us, I'm sure, but some of you probably don't know anything about us. And I wanted to say, we're not a nonprofit, we're not funded, we're nothing like that. We're just a grassroots organization, just people who are dedicated and working towards our collective liberation. So we're just, we're all volunteers just in this, trying to work towards a better world. So there's actually a history of radical childcare collectives in other places around the country. So we drew some of our inspiration from those groups. And we had a particular connection with the Portland Child Care Collective. So we drew some of our organizing principles from them, which was really helpful, and from some of the other collectives around the country. But basically we came to be a couple of years ago because we actually knew of the AAPRP's work. Some of us lived in Oregon and for a time, and we knew about Onisono specifically, who's like a huge inspiration. And when she moved here and started the chapter, we actually, like, part of FAM's coming to be is like intricately connected with the AAPRP, because we saw like the wonderful, really, really important work that the AAPRP was going to be doing here. And we were like, as non-African people, how can we lift up that work that's really important? And one way we thought was, well, we could offer childcare at some of you all's events. So that was kind of how it came to be. We started just in a small way, and then we're like, we should make this a little more organized and start offering free childcare to other, radical groups who are working towards liberation from, imperialism and the U.S. settler state. So, that's kind of how we came to be. And I think Summer could speak a little bit more to our mission and goals.
Yeah, you already covered a lot of it. That theme of collective liberation is really important. You can see that in our evolving document on our goals and agreements. And the first part of that, it centers supporting the struggle for liberation from European imperialism and the U.S. settler state. So FAM has always been about supporting other organizations working toward those kind of goals, such as the AAPRP. The Red Nation also is an important one, a group for indigenous liberation and decolonization that we've supported also since the beginning. And that's really the opposition to the U.S. settler state, and that analysis of it is founded on African slavery and indigenous dispossession. That's something that really holds together the left in Albuquerque, in my experience. FAM was part of a coalition with the AAPRP and Red Nation and other groups that's recently gone dormant, the Mayday 505 coalition. But a lot of the events in that centered on that theme of opposing the U.S. state, such as Fourth of the Law. And that's been something that personally has, kept me excited and engaged in this work, and something I feel passionately about.
Thank you so much.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Summer.
Oh, just one thing I wanted to add. It's something we try to emphasize in our events as well. We'll talk more about, exactly how we organize later on. But in our most recent orientation, training for folks who might potentially be interested in getting involved in FAM. We started off with emphasizing that opposition to the U.S. and the U.S.'s founding mythology because it was near President's Day, and we just had an activity of people kind of desecrating the image of George Washington and saying what they hadn't been told in history books about George Washington, and just that sort of message of opposing the U.S. the U.S.'s founding and mythology. And it's also really important to make sure we don't get confused for like people who support the Democratic Party or want to redeem the USA.
Hell yeah.
Thank you, Summer. I'm so glad you added that. That was fire. I did not have that context of that's how you all came to be in regards to against like U.S. occupation, as well as like coming at like establishing yourself right before President's Day, right?
Oh, sorry. Just let me clarify. The President's Day training started this year. It was how we were founded. Just our most recent, the last training that we did.
Okay, got it. Thank you so much. But that's still fire.
Yeah. For folks that don't know, like when we used to have in-person events, FAM would literally be there every single time. Sometimes it'd be like one kid and it'd be like 4 of them, and they would just be like doing childcare at our events for free. And it's really incredible because, like, at least in my experience, a lot of like the most diligent, consistent, and militant organizers are parents. But a lot of times, like, social justice spaces, left spaces, are not family-friendly spaces. Like, they're just not. And so what FAM is doing is like really remarkable because it's making them, like, it's a form of accessibility to make spaces open for families, to make spaces open for children. So what FAM is doing is like making our spaces truly accessible, like contributing to making our spaces truly accessible. So we really, really appreciate it.
Definitely. And as a recipient, like, of my son being involved, and I've also had other family members involved of them being able to share their time with them and do lots of really fun activities, they're also listening. So they're listening and they're also learning about African liberation. They're listening and learning about capitalism and like all the things that we talk about as organizers. So it's really great because it allows me as a parent to be involved and not have to worry about if I'm going to have access to childcare. But I can be involved and learn, and my son can also learn as well, side by side.
I have roller skates.
I also just want to shout out that there's like a stream of parents in the comments being like, "We love you." Cleo from the Red Nation, Bird, Brittany. Someone asked, like, actually, we'll get to the audience question part later. But y'all actually already answered the first question, like, super in depth. We were going to ask, like, what's your mission? How'd y'all come to be? You answered that. So next question we have for y'all is, what does it take to become a member of FAM, and what kind of training do y'all do together?
Yeah, that's something we're still figuring out. It's been evolving as we've existed.
Yeah, we have a bit of a process. So if there are folks out there who are interested in joining us, definitely reach out to us. Back before the pandemic, we were trying to do at least once a year, like a kind of in-person orientation and getting a bit into training. But we, as we touched on before, part of what we're trying to do is support awesome organizations like the AAPRP. But I think another important part that you all just spoke to is doing some of our own political education amongst ourselves and also, the wider public and other organizations. And so I think, just we're really encouraging, part of what we're doing is encouraging people who, historically have not done as much care labor to get involved too. So if you're like, I'm interested in helping out, but I've never worked with kids, or I don't know how to do that. Part of our mission is like to find ways for you to start getting comfortable with that and to encourage you to, step into some of those roles that have maybe some people have not historically been in. But I think that's another part of our goal is just to recognize care labor and recognize like the, also called reproductive labor. And so much of that is invisibilized in our society. And, we really just underscore that, settler patriarchy has relied on the feminization and invisibility of care labor to like prop up those who are in power and keep, colonized people and non-men in oppressed folks just like in these low-wage labor roles, or, it keeps, like we're saying, like keeping people so busy that they don't have time to organize, which is but so I got away from the question, but basically, what it takes is just a commitment to kind of to all of the goals and values that we just spoke to, but also to kind of, continually learn ourselves. So that's something that it takes. I think we have some collective agreements that we all agree to as FAM to kind of engage in ongoing political education, to share collective responsibilities, to commit to personally understanding and abolishing all these, external and internal oppressions, white supremacy, ableism, colonialism. So we're constantly trying to learn and trying to educate ourselves, educate others, learn from the kids. Another thing that it takes is we're not trying to exclude children from these spaces. We're trying to bring them in and learn from them. So we believe that we're not, one thing I want to stress is we're not going to these spaces to say, oh, let's take the kids away from what's going on and keep them quiet in the corner or keep the babies from crying. We're there to be like, these people, these children, youth, people of all ages are part of our communities. And so how can we bring them in? How can we learn from them? How can we include them? It is an accessibility issue. How can we bring in people from all backgrounds, because that's what we need to do to really reach our goals that we're all working towards. So I think just a humility is what we try to bring to FAM, and just learning from each other. And we have a couple of like membership levels. We have our core FAM members who kind of do a lot of like the daily organizing and coming to meetings and scheduling things and doing political education together. And so that's one like level that people can join in. And we also have an extended FAM. Some of you are probably watching out there. Hi. And those have been that's another really important part of FAM is our extended FAM, we call it. So those are people that maybe, want to get involved with getting involved with the kids, getting involved in these big events that we sometimes provide childcare at. So we've done like childcare at like the Red Nation, like their big conferences that are once a year that are 2 days, and so kids will be there, 12 hours a day for 2 days. And that, we need a lot of help at those. So there have been people who can come for like an hour or two and help out. Or a couple, like once or twice a month, and help out at bigger events where we're doing childcare. And those are our extended fam folks, and they're really important too. So that's like another level of membership that folks can get involved in. Sorry, I'm talking a lot, but Summer, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I want to emphasize that youth liberation angle, and that's one of the exciting and challenging things about FAM's approach and being part of a FAM is we always do have to think about how we're interacting with the kids when we're doing childcare, and we're not necessarily doing it in the standard model. And I know for me, being very very invested in youth liberation as a political project, it's something I think about constantly. Like how am I engaging, and and in what ways is my role here, as an authority figure and as an adult, what is that harmful, and how can I mitigate that, and promote youth liberation as part of the collective liberation struggle. So that's something we always talk about in the collective, and it's an ongoing conversation. And that also relates to the point about feedback and criticism, which is another FAM principle. And that's something that we also, try to bring to the forefront. It's not just you can't, in FAM, we can't necessarily expect to just, keep doing things the way we've been doing them. And that's been something that's at times been challenging for me, is, learning how to do that, to listen to feedback and to change and so on. But we do think it's very important for our organizational structure and just to accomplish the goals that we have, to have that approach. So we have specific sections during our meetings for that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for sharing that. I want to ask a follow-up. What are some of the things that you're doing around political education and youth liberation?
Yeah, so we do think political education is really important, and we learn a lot from both the groups that we are working for. We learned a lot from the AAPRP, from the Red Nation, from other groups. So we're always doing that, but we try to also read. So I actually have one of the books that we've done a lot of our political education readings from. It's called Revolutionary Mothering, and we've actually had some events where we've like gotten more in depth into the idea of revolutionary mothering. So this is like a book of like short pieces and essays from people from all different communities about like what revolutionary mothering means to them, and it spurs a lot of great conversations, I think, for us about what how we're engaging in the work and with the kids. And I think, as Summer said, with youth liberation, we're always, it's complicated and it's hard because we are in positions of power as adults. Power that's, our society is built with this hierarchy based on age. And so I think it's kind of a constant challenge to like listen to have a balance of like listening to the kids that we're working with and treating them as equals, and really constantly pushing back against the idea that like we know everything and they don't know anything. It's just a constant like listening back and forth, and there is tension, as Summer is saying, and sometimes there's tension between what the kids want and what maybe their parents want. We had that at our Revolutionary Mothering event where we had actually members of the AAPRP on a panel talking about revolutionary mothering, and we definitely wanted the kids to speak too. So we try to do that when we can, like have the kids, give them a voice and say, what are you interested in? What do you have to say? Like, what do you want to organize? What are your ideas? And just giving them that voice, I think, is part of how we're engaging in that youth liberation. And I'd like to do that even more, give them more of like, let them take the lead on what they are interested in and what they want to do. So I think that's one thing.
Yeah.
what you're saying about youth liberation and youth-centered approaches, as well as revolutionary mothering. I remember in that space, Avery was on the panel, and you all, one of the questions you all asked me, and it sticks with me, is you asked him what was the most important lesson that I taught him, and he said consent. And at first, I was like, that's really interesting to me. Like, I would have thought he would have said love, right? But then because of how much we talk about consent, like I could see why he says that now. And we're always talking about why consent is important. And that's something that I'm trying to do, as also making sure like he has the skills and he's equipped to know about even hugs and what does that mean, or even touch. And so like, I appreciate that, because like when you talked about like tension, it was like, that was really interesting, that panel. Avery, let's talk more about your answers. But because I listened to him and I took time to listen to why he felt consent was the most important lesson I taught him that was important. So teaching me. And the other thing he took away from there, and I wish he was in the space, but he was saying revolutionary mothering that's something he does to his cousin. That's something that he does with Yuri now, Birdson. And so it's really great for him to see himself as like a revolutionary mothering, and how it doesn't have to be connected to a female role, how we all can be doing revolutionary mothering.
I also, so folks in the comments, I just like chiming in, just saying we agree with y'all, like heck yes. Brittany saying heck yes to including children's voices. Children are the most badass comrade. Miriam says young people have so much to teach us and are an important part of the conversation. Our comrade Tiernan, who's in Portland, says you do not plant a fruit tree for you to enjoy. It's for the next generation, and that's from the elders of the National Democratic Movement of the Philippines. And also, I talked about the PIDC at the top of the show, which is like a mass organization. There's like millions of people in the PIDC of all ages. Like, I've met PIDC members that were like 8 years old, because they have a full like an understanding that in order to actually build a revolution, you have to organize like every single segment of the society. It's not just like cishet men or women. It's like your grandma, your auntie, like kids, like all segments of a society have something to contribute to liberating that society, including children. And so like FAM's approach of like upholding the autonomy of children, of saying children have ideas and like, you know, things they can offer us, things they can teach us, is really important.
Yeah, one thing I just want to quickly add on that is part of FAM's approach to political education is stressing the connections between all these different systems of power and oppression. And one way adult supremacy, or ageism, connects with radical politics is so often the idea of, of children not knowing anything and their opinions being worthless and their actions being worthless is directly used against radicals. Of any age. And this is something, I've encountered lots, especially online. People always just say, oh, you're just like a 15-year-old, right? Like your ideas are so childish and immature. You can't get rid of capitalism. You can't get rid of the USA, that kind of thing. So that's one of the many examples of that. It's also used when you have young folks engaging in so much revolutionary action, as you've seen recently with the uprisings. That's been led by African youth, and there are really strong generational dynamics in that case, and you constantly see people, saying, oh, they're just kids, they don't know what they're doing, they're just destroying everything. So that's one of the many reasons why, challenging ageism and adultism is critical for revolutionary movements.
Thanks so much. You got the next question, Monica?
Yes, so thank you for sharing how revolutionary mothering is connected to your work. How have y'all adapted organizing during the pandemic? We went from in-person events, and now we're not able to do that just due to the safety of everybody's well-being. So how have you adapted organizing during the pandemic? And also, how did you organize before the pandemic?
Yeah, it's been a challenge, I think, as it has been for all of us to adapt. And I think in the beginning of the pandemic, we weren't quite sure, I was kind of feeling like, well, what do we do now? We're so based on, I think I was telling Summer at our last in-person meeting, we had like 15 in-person events on our calendar for the next couple months. It was a lot. I was kind of like, whoa, we're going to be really busy. But then they all got canceled. So it was kind of like, where do we go from here? And we drew inspiration from some comrades across the country who actually were starting to put together Zoom events and sing-alongs for the kids during the beginning of the pandemic. And that's one thing that we've done is we host a weekly sing-along story time. Now it's kind of morphed into a bit of just a hangout where some of the kids that we've worked with in the past can just get on Zoom and see us and engage with us. And we have a different theme every week. Anything from we've tried to do some more political themes like justice and really talking like what does that mean to you, and touch on like the recent uprisings, to the other side of just doing what the kids are interested in, like science experiments or bugs or just a range of things. And I think it's it's been challenging because it's different. We're all adapting to how it is to engage with each other on Zoom, but it's been so great to have a way to continue to see some of the kids and youth that we've worked with, and to keep engaging with them. And it's been really fulfilling for me to hear that some of them, are telling us they really enjoy it. And it's just a nice way for us to see each other, and despite the physical distance. So that's one thing we've done. And I think another thing is, the pandemic, I think, is giving us a little time to reflect on where we're at and kind of bring in some new members, which has been really exciting. That's another thing.
And we have still done just a couple in-person events, such as at one of the Juneteenth events, and the To Bloom in the Desert event, because those are outdoor events, so we felt those were safe enough.
Yeah, but it's really underscored to me just the importance of the relationships we've built over the past couple of years. I think it's been great to see how that we can maintain those even during the pandemic.
Yeah, it's great how you all are able to continue building community and the voice and choice of the young people being able to say some of the things that they want to learn about, and then them being engaged in the conversation. What's happening in our city, what's happening in the world also impacts them, and then being able to share from their lens about what justice means, what it means to them around Black Lives Matter or African liberation is really important questions that you all are asking our children. And so it's deeply appreciative. And being at Juneteenth, yes, that was a really long day. And y'all were there the whole entire time with the children doing so many activities. Thank you. Do you want to share some of the activities you all were doing or how you were organizing before the pandemic, beyond just the work you were doing with children during the collective at events?
Yeah, I meant to touch on that, just to give some of you know us, but to give folks who haven't been at the events that we're at an idea of how we operate. We're totally mobile, so we're a childcare collective, so that's one of our main functions, despite that we sometimes put on other events around different political topics. But the bulk of what we do is just showing up to events like AAPRP events. For instance, as Onyesomu mentioned, we're always at your monthly Pan-African film series to do childcare there. So we're totally mobile. So we'll just come with all the supplies that we need. So we come with like toys and bubbles and games, but also books. We have like a pretty large library of books by authors and illustrators of color to kind of that's been important to us to have books with themes and characters that colonized children can relate to. And those have spurred some really great discussions. But we come with, books with radical coloring pages, with art supplies, snacks. Food is really important to us. We believe that we shouldn't ever have any events without food. So we always have, food and drinks and, outdoor games so that if at all possible, the kids can run around outside. So we kind of show up to these events with everything we need to engage with the kids and engage with kids of all ages, because we kind of never know who's going to show up. So we try to be as prepared as possible from everything we need, from babies to older youth. And we kind of just have different activities and let the kids as best we can, drive what we're doing. And I think it's nice to have the mix of things, because sometimes we've had like really great discussions around some of the books that we read, and the kids have really surprised me by understanding some of like these deep themes in some of the books. Like we've had one of my favorite books is one that Summer got brought back from Canada that talks about losing indigenous people and like loss of language, and some of the kids who are 4 or 5 years old like deeply related to that. So that was like really amazing to see them engage with some of these books and readings we've done. And other times they just want to run around. They want to blow bubbles and run around. And I think that's part of like what we're there for, to see them just as whole humans who have needs and things they want to do, and just learn from that. So that's kind of how we operate. And it's really nice for us to be, I think, at events like the APRP series that happens at once a month, or we do childcare at the Diné study group, where we see the same kids and same families week after week and month after month. That's nice to build those relationships. So that's sort of how we operated before the pandemic.
I really appreciate that you always like take the time to find activities that are going to be related to the space where you're doing childcare, which I really appreciate. And also, like when you're organizing an event, like Juneteenth was like so much work, but we knew when we asked out for childcare that it was just like, it was fine, like it was covered. And that's like, it's like such like a weight off that we're just like, again, just extremely grateful for. Also, I actually had a follow-up question about the revolutionary mothering. Because I wanted y'all, so it doesn't seem like it's gendered. And so could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so that directly comes from a piece by Alexis Pauline Gumbs. And it was this one passage that inspired our understanding of that. What would it mean for us to take the word mother as a less gendered identity and more as a possible action, a technology of transformation that those people who do the most mothering labor are teaching us right now? So in that sense, it's mothering as nurturing, as cultivating life.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, and that touches on, I think the whole revolutionary mothering idea is so rich, because as Monique was saying, Avery has helped us understand that. A lot of the kids have helped, a lot of the parents that have helped us understand that, and it's just a constantly evolving idea of like, how do we nurture each other, how do we grow, how do we build the systems of relations that we're going to need in like the world that we're trying to build. I think one thing that like runs through what a lot of us, maybe not all of us, but a lot of us that joined FAM have seen kind of the difficulties of just the nuclear family system and how toxic that can be. And so we're trying to build a different relationships. We believe that, children shouldn't be just raised by the nuclear family that can have so many like patriarchal issues and toxicity, but like we're all responsible for how these children are growing, and we're all helping each other, and it's a collective responsibility. So it's kind of and totally genderless, trying to take out, change these ideas that we have of that mothering is just what women do, and change how we see that, and change the divisions of care labor, and just upend all of these things that are so deeply ingrained in us that cause really so much harm.
Thanks, Elena.
Thank you so much, for elevating how we're all responsible for all of the children in our community, and that's how I grew up. So even though with the kidnapping of our ancestors, they really try to strip away our culture, is growing up like everyone's family. Like we have a responsibility to one another, and so like I watched my younger cousins. People in the community watched me. I grew up in a predominantly African community here in Albuquerque. And so that concept isn't new. And so like if we can more and more see ourselves as a collective, as a big entire community. And so that's something that FAM offers continuously. So thank you so much for that.
So the last question we have for y'all, and you actually touched on this a little bit, but perhaps you could expand, is how do you show up for African liberation?
Yeah, I think we have touched on it a little bit. We strive to support the struggle of colonized folks, African and indigenous, those folks. Those are in the forefront of our work. And, we get requests to offer childcare, and we always prioritize African and indigenous groups and those that are working towards collective liberation. And so I think that's a big way, just how we prioritize and try to uplift, these organizations and voices that should be leading our communities. And I think just the fact that we are offering childcare, I think, is part of what we're trying to do, because I think just the way that our society is structured, if there are groups that want, African and indigenous voices and women and non-men to show up to organize, there needs to be childcare there, because, these people have childcare responsibilities and care labor responsibilities. And so just recognizing they cannot be in these spaces, they cannot organize if there's not childcare or family-friendly, child-friendly spaces, is one way that we try to show up for African liberation, because you all have families, and we want to support the whole family.
There's like no child in that's even associated with APRP that does not love y'all. Every single time fam is in this space, every single APRP child is like, fam! They love you because you show up so consistently, and you treat them as whole people. We're just but we didn't have a situation like this in Portland where we had constantly available radical childcare. And so having this in Albuquerque has been so transformative, and it's so amazing, in such an intentional way to bring children into movements. And it's so important. It's so important. That's why we wanted to have y'all on the show, so folks would know that this kind of work exists, that this is what it looks like, that it's actually not, it's difficult, but it's look at what it took to get it started. So yeah, we just very much appreciate y'all.
It's not that complicated, listen, care, show up, be there. And that's what, we're recognizing care labor is really important, but also everyone can do it, and we can work together on these things.
Right.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, Onyesawu. So I've been able to dive deeper in because not only FAM, but I see others modeling that. They're like, show up, we'll take care of them. It's okay, show up, we'll take it. So I see more and more spaces where it's okay for me to do that. I think about Clifton and how Clifton watched Avery so much and would say, I could call and be like, Clifton, I have to go do this. And Clifton would be like, bring Avery. And so the space to create community and mentor children and love and nourish them is so critical. And we miss him, and not only did he do this with my son, not only did he provide that love and compassion, he did it with every child he encountered. And so I just really think about how now me as an organizer doing revolutionary work, how I can dive deep and know that wherever my child is with FAM, he is 100% safe, loved, and cared for, and being himself. And that I'm starting to see that more and more in other spaces. And I want to attribute it to the work that FAM is doing and the work that other revolutionary organizers are doing about talking about the collectivism. And like Onyesawu said, children it's critical for them to be part of the movement and part of liberating our communities. So I'm so glad that my son is safe, and so many of children have the safe environment and space to grow with FAM, no matter where FAM is, if FAM is virtual or if FAM is in person.
Absolutely. And that's so, I just want to say it's so exciting to hear that it's becoming more the norm, because we're in FAM, you know, we're just a few people. Sometimes we've had, you know, just 3 members scrambling to do all this different events, or 4 or 5, you know, and so part of it's like, we want to just say, you all can do this. Like organizations, you can provide your own childcare. You can organize that within your organization. Or if you're not thinking about it, why are you not thinking about it? Who are you excluding? You know, let's start talking about this. And we're just a few people, but we want to say others can do this. Everyone can do this. We have to. We all need to build child-friendly spaces. And yeah, so it's great to see that becoming more of the norm. And that's definitely a big part of, you know, we would like to just like not even be eventually like not even be needed, because it's so much the norm to include people of all ages, or that or have every organization and group doing their own childcare, you know. So we're working towards that.
This is usually the part of the show where we would give y'all questions from the audience, but it's literally just nothing but parents saying that they love you. So I can read some of the comments. So Jay says, I love to Monica's comments about, you know, how Avery said the greatest lesson that you taught him was about consent. Jay says, I love that. I appreciate you teaching consent. I've watched you do it and it touched my heart. I've always felt like kids are not taught about consent as deeply as they should be. Other folks saying they love Avery. Everybody loves Avery. How could you not? How could you not? Bird saying that they've learned so much from FAM. Jay saying thankful for all the work that FAM does. The engagement that y'all do with kids is critical. What else? Mothering is nurturing is cultivating life. So powerful. So folks really like the comments y'all made about revolutionary mothering and how it's not gendered are deeply resonating with folks. Ricky saying thank y'all. Just like thank you, Summer and Elena. And then Miriam's pointing out that Clifton and Avery's connection was beautiful. Seeing Avery explain toxic masculinity to him was beautiful. So yeah, I don't see a question in the comments, but basically it's like a lot of folks like reflecting on the impact that y'all had in this city. Like you precipitated a shift in like the culture of organizing for the better, because it's made it more accessible and it's made it open to even more people, including youth. So yeah. Do y'all have any, closing remarks or things that you want to share with the audience before we wrap it up?
Yeah, there's something I wanted to mention from what Monica just said. Just mentioning Clifton made me think of the monthly dinners FAM was doing before the pandemic. That was a big thing for us, and that was specifically to support African and Indigenous organizers, families that we work with, so that's one of the practices we did, and one of the ways we support African liberation. And those were just lovely dinners. I really miss them. Hopefully we'll get back to them once there's a vaccine or something, whenever this ends.
Yeah, and the monthly dinners came directly out of one of the kids' comments at our Revolutionary Mothering themed event. So it was just it's really important, I think, for us to try to support families and mothers or other caregivers in material ways. So yeah, something one of the kids said at that event made us realize, wow, you know, parents and caregivers, they do, and especially during this pandemic, it's so difficult on parents and caregivers right now. And, you know, we're trying to figure out more ways to support as we can, but the dinners came out of this idea of how can we support families more materially. And, you know, it's small, but, you know, we have to start somewhere. But, you know, providing a dinner once a month where parents and caregivers could just come, bring their kids, bring their families, and just we do everything. We cook, we clean, we just have a space where families can come and eat and hang out and connect and talk about, you know, what's going on in their lives. That has been really beautiful, and I miss it too. And I think we'll be really excited to get back to that. And because we had to stop, one thing that's come during the pandemic that I forgot to mention too is we did recently do like a little care package for a lot of the families that we've worked with, and that came out of the fact that we couldn't do the dinners anymore. So we were like, oh, what should we do? Can we like give, you know, we went through a few different ideas, like can we give meals to them at their house, or can we give them like gift certificate? And then it turned into something I think even better, because we ended up doing these whole care packages where folks in the community could contribute things like food and teas and plants and flowers and artwork. And so that was like a really beautiful way of connecting with some of the families that we have built these relationships with over the past couple of years. And we wish we could do the dinners, but in the meantime we're going to try to do another care package. So if folks want to get involved with that, definitely reach out to us too.
So Bird, who has participated in the dinners, commented, "Thank you for everything, fam. The dinners are a big reason I even know half the organizers I do, including Avery and Monica. Also, when you're food insecure, a meal is a big deal, especially when you don't have to watch your children or clean up." And then another comrade commented, "I would love to be involved in those dinners when they happen again, cooking or cleaning or whatever else is needed." So how can folks reach out to you if they want to be involved in your work?
Yeah, we have a Facebook page. So it's FAM in ABQ. And then our email is faminabq@gmail.com. So you can reach us there or message us on Facebook, or if you know any of us individually, you can always message us. But yeah, Facebook or email are probably the best ways right now.
And yeah, Bird says the care package was amazing. So we posted your Facebook and your email in the comments. We want to thank y'all so much for joining us and sharing a lot about, why you do this work and how you do this work. I can tell that folks learned a lot and that it deeply resonated with them. So thank y'all so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you so much
for having us on.
Yeah. Cool. All right. So
After this interview, let's see you guys. Let's just see you sooner or later when we have another event.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely looking forward to it.
Thanks, y'all. You can drop now, and we will see you around. Have a good
Thank
rest of your day.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
So once again, that was FAM, Free Access to Movements Childcare Collective, who has done a remarkable amount of work in this city, making social justice movements more accessible for families and children. And we appreciate them. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank y'all so much for your comments and interaction during that interview. We appreciate it so much. And I know FAM did as well. Anything you want to add about that interview, Monica? Or we can move on to COVID updates and current events.
Yes, for COVID updates, yeah, who can, thank you. I really appreciated that space with them and learning more about them, and Avery being part of that interview. That was all organic, by the way, not planned. It was a way to get him, keep him engaged. So I'm glad he was able to listen and ask a couple questions and share.
Yeah.
So for COVID updates, so we're still in a pandemic. It's really critical that people continue to social distance, people continue to wash their hands. If you are organizing, it's important that you get tested. There's 2 clinics you can get tested in, or 3, excuse me. So you can be tested at First Nations, at Casa de Salud, as well as at the DOH clinic site. So we've been told that at DOH clinics that you can be tested there and you will not be turned away if you don't have any symptoms. All the rest have symptoms requirements to be tested. So make sure you always Google those websites and search what times and what times, like for example, at DOH, even though it's a walk-up, is preferably preferred if you schedule an appointment. So that's really critical to remember. Wear your mask up. It's really important to wear a mask. Wearing a mask is important for you as well as important for everyone around you. We know that COVID-19 is continuing to harm and take people's lives. There's been over 193,000 people in this country who have died due to the pandemic, and it's continuing to rise. In the initial of when the pandemic started, it was estimated that 200,000 people would unfortunately lose their lives in the pandemic. And we are really close to that. And it's because there is no plan. This country has made no plan to save lives at all. What they're wanting to do is continue the economy as is, which is based in a foundation in capitalism, and not trying to save people. But we know this. They continue to not show up for people, are not center people, not center the most impacted. As we shared this before, 93% of people who are dying are African, Indigenous, or Chicano. So we know that is why they are also not intervening, because it is our people who are being most impacted. So anything that you can do to get involved in different efforts in your community that supports people, get involved. We also know that the governor is being commended about her approach around COVID-19. Somebody shared on my Facebook page today about that. And why will we celebrate when we know people from behind the walls are continuing to be impacted? So their numbers are not decreasing. Their numbers are growing. They're still transporting people during a pandemic. We also know people have been evicted. The numbers aren't in yet, but we know people are being impacted by evictions.
Very dangerous.
Yes, thank you, Avery. Avery said it's very dangerous.
And they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah. And so because of that, what we should be doing is demand accountability, demand safety, demand strategies that will help people. Like we have so many things that are calling for free people behind the walls. She has only released 143 people from behind the walls. It has not even taken approaches to make sure people behind the walls are safe. There is not enough COVID-19 practices being even implemented behind the walls. Like you can't get well in a cell, they can't social distance, it just spreads. And we know people from behind the walls are also getting in trouble for communicating and sharing what they're experiencing there. So let's not celebrate that. Let's continue to hold her accountable and ask for people to be freed from behind the walls. Not just Clifton White, but everyone that's behind the walls. Nobody should be behind the walls during a pandemic, as well as our young people and the Juvenile Detention Center.
Yeah. And a comment pointed out in the comments that ICE has also continued to deport folks from detention centers, not just in New Mexico, but throughout the United States, and spread the virus to other countries. So the United States is currently the global epicenter of this pandemic, is failing by every single measure to address it, is failing even to track it on any level. But at the same time, they are deporting people from this country to nations with no health infrastructure. They are deporting people from the epicenter of the pandemic to poor countries all over the world and forcing them to deal with the United States' negligence. And also, thank you, Monica, for pointing out that even though like the governor of New Mexico is being like praised nationally because of the appearance of low COVID numbers in the state, like those numbers aren't real is the thing. Like the numbers aren't real. Like what, as Monica pointed out, like if you don't have symptoms, even though we've known like being able to spread COVID without symptoms has been like a thing for the entire pandemic. But if in New Mexico, if you don't have symptoms, it is nearly impossible to find a place that will test you. Like you have to find like that very short list of places that are accepting people with no symptoms to get a test, which means the majority of people who might have COVID and not display symptoms, but who are still contagious, have no way of ever finding out if they have it or not. So they're just like spreading it. And even if you do have symptoms, it's difficult to find a test. And as Monica pointed out, this virus is spreading in New Mexico's detention centers and prisons and jails completely unchecked. So even though the governor of New Mexico is getting national praise for handling of this virus, like if you look deeper, it's not what it appears. And this is not just the case in New Mexico. This is the case in many, many other U.S. states. Like, I don't know if folks remembered back in like March when people were like, China's lying about how many people have COVID, blah, blah, blah. But the United States, like as we speak, is like literally fudging the numbers. Is literally attempting to cover up who has this virus by controlling access to tests, by manipulating the numbers, by like a comrade whose son lives in North Dakota was saying North Dakota's not testing anybody under 18. So like if you're a kid, you can't get a COVID test in North Dakota. So they truly have no idea. The United States truly has no idea how many people have this virus, and it's also making it extremely difficult for people to find out if they have it. So it's just like, even if you live in a blue state, even if your governor was invited to speak at the DNC because she's like allegedly handling the pandemic well, like, it's just not the truth. It's not the truth. The United States is covering up how bad this problem is. And it's happening in red states and it's happening in blue states. Another thing that's happening in some blue states, I'm really like harping on this because people keep telling me that to change our conditions, we need to vote for Democrats. We need to vote, blue people back into power. And I'm like, I'm looking around and I see blue people fucking up everywhere. So right now, the entire western half of the United States is on fire. Like, we live in New Mexico and like the surrounding area is on fire. We got smoke coming in from California. I have comrades living in Portland who are being slowly surrounded by growing wildfires. Almost the entire state of California is on fire. And the wild thing is that this is now like a yearly occurrence. There is now officially a fire season in the western half of the United States. It is happening every single year and is getting worse year after year. We know it's getting worse. Everybody's like, damn, that's getting worse. And yet, there is no plan. There is no long-term plan. There is no short-term plan to address this problem that everybody knows exists. Right now, if your home, if your town, if your block is in the path of a wildfire, that shit is just gonna burn down. And if you don't have insurance, if you can't afford insurance, if you can't afford to leave, then you are fucked. Because there are no resources and there is no plan to either prevent these fires or help people when they fall victim to them. And again, this is something that has been getting worse. This is something that everybody, like the whole country, all levels of government, whether from like the California government to the national government, they all know this is gonna happen. And up until this point, there is no plan. Like, what is Biden's plan for addressing these fires long term? What is Trump's plan for addressing these fires long term? There's like entire towns in Oregon that are just like gone, like burned to the ground, gone. And there's no plan. Those people are just like homeless now. And they're like, people are like, well, I hope you have house insurance. Like, it's fucking wild. It's crazy. That's not right. It's out of control because there's nothing bad about being crazy. So I don't want to use crazy as a pejorative. I'm going to say it's out of control. So yeah, I just wanted to point that out because, California is a blue state. Oregon or Portland is like a blue city. I don't know if Oregon's a blue state. I can't remember. But in any case, like whether it's a Democrat governor like we have here or like there is in California, or whether it's a Republican governor, the situation is the same. There is no plan to help regular, poor, and working class and colonized people when natural disaster strikes in the United States. And thanks to catastrophic climate change, thanks to the reality of the situation where summers are getting hotter and drier, it means these fires are gonna get worse. These fires are gonna get worse. They're not gonna stop. They're gonna burn bigger and bigger portions of these states. And again, there is no plan. And then also Comrade Jay points out in the comments that the fires got out of control because California relies on prison labor, the labor of enslaved people inside of prisons to fight these fires. But because, as Monica pointed out, people in prisons are being abandoned during the pandemic, are being left helpless while this virus spreads behind the walls, there is now no labor force available to fight the fires because they're all sick. So California was exploiting these people in the first place, but California didn't even have the long-term vision to keep them healthy, even though they knew these fires are gonna happen. And that's a blue state. That's a blue state. That's a blue state. Like, get out of my face.
When you say that, it just makes me think about how everything's evolved. So just like, even though jails and prisons are plantations, so just like on the plantation, we're not going to care for you, but we're going to work you to death, and we're going to beat you, and we're going to harm you while you pick our food, while you grow everything and you grow the economy. And now we're going to use you for fires, to fight fires, and again, make money while you're enslaved in prison, and we're not going to take care of you. Oh, now we don't have people to fight fires because people are sick because we're using enslaved labor. Like, it just all evolves. It's like the same thing, history repeating itself.
And then some people will be like, yeah, the way to fix this is the vote. And I'm like, for who? Who is the person that has the plan that's going to address this? Who is the person? Who is the person? But so this land is all indigenous people's land. And before, you know, European settlers came here and stole this land and then built, like, you know, a bunch of, like, ridiculous infrastructure on top of it and destroyed, like, the natural harmony that was in place, there weren't fires across the entire region. When this land was under the control of indigenous people knew how to take care of it in such a way that there wouldn't be these massive, destructive fires. They knew how to control that shit by burning off the underbrush strategically to make sure that the fires wouldn't spread and to make sure that new and old growth was protected. Indigenous people knew how to do that for centuries, for generations. And then European people came from out of nowhere and were like, actually, we don't get what you're doing, and also fuck off. And then we're just gonna build a bunch of shit that makes no sense. Oh no, all of our stuff is on fire. Like, indigenous people already knew. Like, the same thing happened in Australia. Remember when the entire continent of Australia was on fire? That was actually this year. That was this year. It doesn't feel like it, but it was like earlier this year. And like the indigenous people of Australia were like, we've been told y'all. We've been told y'all what would happen when you didn't continue our land caretaking practices, when you took that shit away from us and didn't even know how to take care of it. Like, they told, like, indigenous people have been calling this, like, saying it was going to happen for a very, very long time. And the reality situation is that as long as this land is under European settler control, as long as this land is under capitalist control, these fires are not going to stop, and there's going to be no plan to help you when you are in their path. If we were to give this land back to indigenous people, these fires would stop, because indigenous people know how to take care of the land to prevent them. The only reason this is happening is because of settler colonialism and capitalism. It's because the exploitative relationship that capitalism has to land and life. Indigenous people can stop all of this. They can stop all of this if they can get their land back. So I just want to make that clear. Like, first, that there is no plan to stop these fires. There is no plan to help people whose, you know, entire, like, lives are destroyed by these fires. And these fires are going to get worse every single year. We already know this is going to happen. And there's no plan under capitalism, Democrat or Republican leadership. There is no plan. The only people that have the plan that are going to work are the people whose the land belongs to in the first place. Point blank. Land back. That's how you stop the fires. Land back.
Land back all the way.
So we're going to wrap it up. But before we do that, I just have a couple of announcements. So this coming Saturday is our monthly Pan-African film series. We talked about it a little bit because Fam used to do childcare at every single film series. But now the film series is virtual because it's a pandemic and we're not trying to get people sick. So you can watch it from anywhere in the world. It's going down 2 p.m. Mountain Time on Saturday. And we're going to be showing a very, very special film. It's called Africa's Black Star, the story of Kwame Nkrumah. And if you don't know who Kwame Nkrumah is, I'll give you like a brief rundown. Kwame Nkrumah is the reason why the AAPRP exists. Kwame Nkrumah literally founded the All African People's Revolutionary Party. So Kwame Nkrumah was the first democratically elected president of the first country to gain independence from colonialism in West Africa. That country was Ghana. Kwame Nkrumah helped lead like a people's mass movement to overthrow British colonialism, and the people elected him president. And then when he became president, he gave a speech at Ghana's independence where he said, like, look, our freedom, the liberation of Ghana, is meaningless unless all of Africa and all African people are liberated from colonialism and imperialism. We must fight to build Pan-Africanism, which is one unified socialist Africa. Otherwise, imperialism will always find a way back in. We have to liberate the entire continent and the entire diaspora in order for African people to be free once and for all. And so, even though Kwame Nkrumah was democratically elected by the people of Ghana, the United States, once they found out he was socialist, was like, no thank you. And so they overthrew his government using the CIA, as they do. And so Kwame Nkrumah was forced to leave Ghana. After that happened, he went to Guinea, where he became president alongside Sékou Touré. Like, Sékou Touré literally made him president of Guinea as well, because that's how lit Kwame Nkrumah was. And so while he was in Guinea, he wrote the Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare. And in the Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare, he called for the formation of the All African People's Revolutionary Party. So Kwame Nkrumah is literally why I am talking to y'all right now, because he is the only reason why the APRP exists. And on Saturday, we're going to show a movie about his entire life, about how he came to be such a revolutionary African leader, about why he became a Pan-Africanist, and about how he took Pan-Africanism forward. So you do not want to miss that. Please join us Saturday, 2 p.m. Mountain Time. You can watch it live on our Facebook page, on our YouTube channel, on Periscope, and on Twitter, because we're super fancy. Is anything else happening?
There's one more thing. Real quick clarifying question about the film series. Are we going to do the film series and then the discussion afterwards? We're going to have my computer's not letting me pull up the link to post it.
Oh, yeah, you're right. So, yeah, so for the film series, we're going to have the discussion in Facebook on YouTube comments, but also we want to invite folks to join us in Zoom so that it won't just be like me and Monica, like talking at y'all like this, so that we can also have like people talking with us. And so we're going to share a Zoom registration link. And so if you would actually like to be like engaged, like on the stream with us, talking about the film, just register and we will host you in the conversation. And we'll share that link in the Facebook event for the film series, which you can find on our Facebook page. And we'll also share the Facebook event across our social media platforms, or rather the Zoom registration link across our social media platforms.
Thank you about that. And then I just also shared in the comments, Millions for Prisoners this Friday. So make sure you come out for the film series on Saturday. See you all there at 2 p.m. And Millions for Prisoners tomorrow night, Friday night, they're going to go block by block, hood by hood. They're going to be passing out masks, calling out free. Yep, they're going to go through our hood too. Free Clifton White, and they're going to be passing out masks. So go check out their Facebook. They have an event page if you want more information, but it's going to be tomorrow night at 6 p.m.
Thanks so much, Monica. So once again, thanks y'all so much for joining us and for tuning into the show. We really appreciate you. Please tune in next week. We're going to have another interview with another really dope organization. I did not remember to look up who that's going to be before this show. So it's going to be a surprise. It's going to be a surprise. But please tune in. We're going to be talking to another great revolutionary organization in Albuquerque. We want to thank you so much for joining us and for sharing the stream and for your participation and questions and for helping us grow this show. We really, really appreciate you. Once again, I'm Onyesanu. This is my comrade Monica. We are members of the All African People's Revolutionary Party New Mexico chapter. We are a revolutionary, Pan-African, socialist, mass political organization with the political objective of Pan-Africanism, which we define as one unified socialist Africa. When Africa is free, Africans everywhere will be free, and that's why we are fighting to build Pan-Africanism. So thanks y'all so much. Stay ready for revolution and have